We may as well just dive right into the the NBA season preview. The league, the season is getting closer and closer. I'm getting more and more excited for the NBA, and in doing kind of the prep for some of this, kind of realizing this is such an awesome time for the league. And we kind of discussed this a little bit yesterday, looking at the top 10 players in the NBA, but the amount of talent that this league has. Like, this was the first time since I started doing these back 3 or 4 years ago that LeBron's not in the top 10. And that, like, he has certainly fallen off a little bit. But he has fallen off, and so many players have risen up that there are just an unbelievable amount of talent. And I do think that part of that is why we will probably be getting at least 2 expansion teams coming up pretty soon. But all of that talent, where does a lot of it lie? Today, we are looking at the top 5 most talented teams in the NBA. Howdy, Toxic. Howdy, Toxic, and howdy, Deeds. Yes, thank you. Thank you for popping in. I gave Toxic a bit of a shout out before, but I do want to say hello to Toxic and to Deeds, the all-stars of the chat, as always. Coming in at number 5 for the most talented team in the NBA, it is the New York Knickerbockers. The Knicks have the turnaround they have. Like, when we look back 5 years ago, if you were to tell yourself back in just before the pandemic even that, oh yeah, so just so you know, the best team in the NHL is going to be the Florida Panthers, and one of the best teams in the NBA is going to be the New York Knicks. Like, just giving you a heads up on all of that. You would have thought it would have been insane. But the Knicks have done a great job of, and it's one of the things we talk about when we do the team building episodes all the time. They built that foundation, they've set that identity, and now they are building around it. And the more I have talked to people who have played at high levels in sports, the more I think that identity thing is actually quite important. You need something when shit's going sideways. Like, look, this is what we do. Let's get back to doing it. It's something to bring it local. It's something I think the Calgary Flames have struggled with for a very long time. And I think they have tried to go the route of, we're gonna be like water, man. We're gonna, whatever style you play, we can play it. And I do think there is a value to that. But when you see in like mixed martial arts, John Jones, like, I'm going to do the thing you're best at. I'm gonna do it better than you. George St. Pierre was very good at that as well. But both of them had that foundation first. You look in the National Hockey League, the Florida Panthers, they have, I think, the talent that they can kind of outskill you. They have the grind that they can kind of outgrind you. They have the defense. They can play the defensive style. They have all of these different styles, but it started with setting that identity with guys like Huberdeau and Barkov and Ekblad of this really tough to play against team, and it kind of blossomed from there. The Knicks have done that here in the NBA, where they hired Tibbs, and they're like, we are going to go all in on making this be a Tibbs team. This is no longer, the identity of the Knicks is no longer going to be, let's wait for a superstar to come here. After Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving were like, hey, deuces, we're going to Brooklyn, which worked out great for them. After that all played out, the Knicks, I think, understood, like, look, this isn't working. If Brooklyn has passed us for KD and Kyrie, which was a layup 3 months before the offseason, I think it was a wake-up call for them. And so they're like, okay, we're getting Tibbs, and we are making a Tibbs team. And they did an amazing job with that, to be able to build this roster around those guys. And now you have, then you go out and you get Jalen Brunson, and that helps, right? So now we have set that foundation, that identity. Now we need to go get, like, kind of the superstars who fit in with that. And to be fair, we didn't know Jalen Brunson was going to be this level of superstar when he was acquired by the New York Knicks, but we did have an understanding that he was pretty good, and he was going to be a pretty good fit on this team. And he turned out to blossom, and then everything kind of fit around him. And now, one of the final pieces that is added is Mikal Bridges. And now you look at the talent on this team. Bridges, who I think is really good. Brunson, who made the top 10 players in the NBA list yesterday. You have Julius Randle, 2-time All-NBA player, and they're already like, wonder where he's going to fit. Hart has been unbelievable at different times. DiVincenzo won them playoff games in the postseason. They have done a really good job of filling out talent that fits what they are looking for and building off of it. I am so high on the Knicks, and they are one of the teams where I just think the sport is better when they are good, and right now they are very, very good, and things are pretty fun in the NBA. At 4, it is the NBA champs from a couple years ago, the Denver Nuggets. They were higher on this list a couple of years ago, and certainly last year, but each year they're just losing a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And these are the dangers of having championship teams in salary cap worlds. And you're never going to apologize for it. I'm not saying, yeah, you know what, actually winning the championship was a bad thing for Denver. That's certainly not the case. But to lose KCP, and then Bruce Brown is gone, and they've kind of lost a bit of this depth as things have kind of played out. Now all of a sudden it is a big four and then a lot of question marks. But it's still a very good big four. Jokic, again, the best player in the league. I guess spoiler alert for the top 10 players in the NBA list that we did, if you haven't checked that one out. But Jokic, very good. Jamal Murray, has had a tough Olympics and has had a tough time staying healthy. But when he is out there, A, fits with Jokic perfectly, and B, is such a great creator, such a very good shooter, and attacks the rim so well. You have Gordon, who is incredibly important to what this team does defensively, and MPJ, who is such a skilled scorer when everything is going. With that top four, you have to consider this one of the best teams in the NBA. At 3, it's the Minnesota Timberwolves. Anthony Edwards has been such a great breakout these last couple of years and has grown into being one of the best players in the NBA. He makes the top 10 list yesterday. You have Karl Anthony Towns, who, while incredibly flawed a lot, is also someone who can, score really, really well and can at least be a good big body that you can put on other big bodies to keep them from dominating in ways that big bodies do. And then the other pieces around, like Gobert, is what he is. And getting benched in the Olympics, not a great look when it's for France. But he is still one of the best defensive players in the NBA. And I just think with that trio there, and then some of the very, very good pieces that they have found to kind of build around that, this is now a very good roster in Minnesota. And so they are in at number 3. At 2, it's Oklahoma City. The moves they made this offseason have rocketed them up. You already had Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and Chet Holmgren, and all these other pieces to build around. And then you turn Giddey, who you couldn't even play in the playoffs. You turn him into Alex Caruso, who was created in a video game to fit this team perfectly and to fit what they need. And then to go out and get Isaiah Hartenstein in free agency. This is a perfectly built basketball team. And the only reason we don't believe that this team can go further is we haven't seen it before. But they are, I think, so clearly the best team in the West. And I think we could get to a point by like January or February where we're going to look back on this list and be like, why were they, 2 feels low. Why weren't they higher? I think this team is that good that they acquired, again, talk about team building. They make a gigantic trade to get Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and every draft pick from the LA Clippers, which has worked out great, by the way. And they have now been able to build up an amazing foundation. And then again, what do you need off of it? Well, we don't need the superstar. We got that in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Some crazy how. In a trade with the Clippers, we have drafted well. Now, let's go out and acquire these pieces and just do the finishing touches on this. They get that with Hartenstein, they get that with Caruso, and they do it perfectly. But in at number 1, it has to be the Boston Celtics. Jason Tatum made our list for top 10 most best players in the NBA last season, or going into this season. And he wasn't even the best player on their team in the NBA Finals. Jaylen Brown took a gigantic step forward last year, and that was not something I thought he had. I was very underwhelmed with Brown 2 playoffs ago when Tatum went out, and all of a sudden it was, oh, by the way, this guy can't dribble to the left, which is a scouting report that we gave guys when I was playing junior basketball in grade 8. And that should not be something that happens in the NBA. But he absolutely elevated his game. And then Kristaps Porzingis, who won't be ready for the start of the season, but the talent he has when it comes to shot making, being a big dude as well, and then rim protection, Holiday and White both elevating their game and the talent that they have. And then some of the other guys, some of the bench options who can come in and just launch threes. Pritchard, who is the greatest half-court shooter in the history of the sport. This is, again, we went over how this team was built. It is a phenomenal example of taking a team's depth and turning it into superstars and guys who fit a championship model. And Boston 100% deserves to be at the top of this list. So they are the most talented team in the NBA.